Hello, I'm Jen. Welcome back to my channel, Literary Love 123, where I combine my master's in English with my passion for the horror genre to talk about the books that I read. Today's video is a November wrap up video. So, after this quick intro, I'll be right back to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of November. While the rest of November was an absolute dumpster fire and absolutely wreaked havoc on my mental health. I'm in the United States, so if you know, you know. Um, if you hear scratching in the background, that's my cat Frere, who is right with you. You can see him hiding now. But anyway, yeah, November, rough as far as reality, but I'm happy to report that at least I had a good reading month. So everything that I read in November was 3 stars and up. So that's great. So let me talk about what I did read in November. Before I get into the actual rated books, I do want to talk about House of Leaves. I read it in November. I have a lot to say about it. I hosted like a book club group read for House of Leaves, and I'm going to be doing a live show on Sunday, December 15th, 2 o'clock Central Time, 8 o'clock, and this is PM for both, 8 o'clock GMT. What I'm not sure what that is. I forgot what that stands for. But anyway, I am going to be joined by Mark at the book thing while I'm on Central Time. He's on GMT, so it's 2 o'clock my time, 8 o'clock his time. And I'm going to save all of my thoughts and my rating for that live show, House of Leaves. So y'all wish me luck on trying to pare down what I want to talk about. And I'm gonna ask a lot of input from Mark about what should we talk about because I can't talk about everything I tabbed and annotated because the live show would go on for 5 hours and nobody wants to do that. So tune into that show if you want to know what I thought about House of Leaves. Okay, so on to the books that I actually did rate. The first one I want to talk about is the nonfiction book I read for November, and that is Millennial Nasties, analyzing a decade of brutal horror film violence. And this is by Ariel Power Schwab or Shop. I'm so sorry. My daughter, you hear her, she's making noise in the background. My husband's in there with her, so she's fine. But she is, and she's nonverbal, so or non-communicative because she can communicate some things, but right now she's communicating excitement, and that's her excited noise. So it's all good. So anyway, this one I did give 3 stars. I think I mentioned that already. So I appreciated the way that Ariel Power Schwab did talk about movies like Hostel and Saw and other of those, movies that often get categorized as torture porn. And she wants to rename them Millennial Nasties. And she broke them down and analyzed what to her they represented, and she intentionally doesn't lean too heavy into like academic terms. So that makes it really easy for most readers to grasp what she's talking about. But sometimes it felt like this book was very repetitive because she was kind of saying the same thing about a lot of these movies. And I admire her ability to dig deeper into these movies, but although there is some subtext and some commentary in the movies she talks about, I feel like a lot of them are really just kind of, I hate to say this, but like shallow. And it's not that I don't like these movies. Hey, I love the Saw franchise. What can I say? But it's challenging to try to pull different things from them. And I felt like she ended up saying a lot of the same things. And so that's why I gave it a 3 because it was enjoyable, but it didn't like blow me away. But if you're interested in hearing someone talk about these movies from a kind of perspective where she's looking at the deeper messages, then it's a good read. And I did get through it pretty quickly, so that's something else too. The rest of the books I read were either on my Kindle or audio. And the next 3-star book that I had was Grim Portraits by Keelan Patrick Burke. This is a short story collection with 6 stories, all featured around some type of art and horror connected with that art. Um, and sometimes the stories, I know it's a short story, but a couple of them just felt like they just ended without any sort of resolution. And it's not just that they were like ambiguous or anything like that. It was just they just cut off. um but I do want to share a few quotes from it that really stood out to me. One of them is, "I'm tired, worn down to ash by the pretense of being human, of being sane, of being period." And that one felt extremely relatable to me, especially after, November 5th. Very relatable to me. Another quote that I really appreciated in this book was this quote: "She was a student of men's deception, having lived a life confronted by it at every turn." So I did enjoy some of the stories, but overall, it was fine. It was good. 3 stars. Uh, the next books that I'm going to talk about are all 3.5. The first one is Curse of the Reaper by Brian McCauley. This is about an actor who played like a slasher villain in a franchise that got very popular, but as the book opens, he's older now and they're going to do a remake of the movie, and instead of casting him back in that role, they cast someone else, and it's about his coming to terms with that, his coming to terms with getting older. There's some mental health, quite a bit of mental health stuff in this book, so trigger warnings for that. It started off really strong for me, but by the time we got to the middle and the end, I just felt like it was a bit of a slog to get through, and I don't remember a whole lot of specifics about it, other than what I just told you. So I don't know what else to say about it. It was fine. 3.5. The next 3.5 book I had was Black Mouth by Ronald Malfi. This is about adults who end up having to go back and confront an evil from their past. So yeah, it has drawn comparisons to It. um, Also, I can see comparisons that could be made between Black Mouth and Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. And this one, similar to Curse of the Reaper, it started off really strong for me. And then as the book went on, it just kind of lost a little bit of its luster. But I would say if you enjoy it, if you enjoy Something Wicked This Way Comes, also Sallow Bend by Alan Baxter, it reminded me of that too. Uh, but it does, again, heavy trigger warnings for this one. It deals with a character who has a mental disability. It also deals with suicide and lots of murder and childhood trauma, domestic abuse. So it's very heavy on that kind of stuff. And again, I don't know what else to say about it really. So 3.5. The next 3.5 book I had was Woman Eating by Claire Coda. I was really excited to get to this because it had been on my TBR for quite some time. And it's not a spoiler to say this is a literary fiction, maybe with some horror elements woven in, about a woman who is a vampire, but she's not your typical vampire just going around slaughtering people. I feel like a lot of it too was more representative of her relationship with her mother, who's also a vampire. Her mother being a bit narcissistic, manipulative. Her mother hated herself and hated the fact that she was a vampire. And so she projected that onto her daughter. There was also, like, in the context of vampires and eating, there was representation for eating disorders. So, definite trigger warning there. For example, one of the things that the character does is watch all the time, like on YouTube or television. Um, these people talking about what they eat in a day. So she'll like look up what I eat in a day model, what I eat in a day athlete, stuff like that. So she's got this obsession with other people and what they eat, and she struggles with, what she eats, what she wants to eat, and it's very heavy on the character study for her. So if you're looking for a plot, if you're looking for like vampire action, this would not be the book for you. But if you're looking for those themes that I just talked about, then you may like that book. Again, like I said, it was fine for me, 3.5. The next few books I'm going to talk about, well, I think I only have one 4-star and then the rest are 5. Yeah. Okay. So, my 4-star book I just finished last night, and that is Christmas at Wheeldale Inn by one of my favorite authors, Gemma Amore. And I wanted to save this one for December, but I just couldn't help it. I just had to go ahead and read it. And it's a novella. So I read it in like a couple of days' time. And this one, content and trigger warnings for domestic abuse, child death. And this is set in Victorian times. And you have a couple who is in serious financial trouble, due to the husband's narcissism, greed, um, ineptness with money. And so they are having to flee. I think London is where they live. They're having to flee the city and get away before they end up in debtor's prison. And while they're on the way in their carriage, it's a terrible snowstorm. This isn't really spoiler, because this happens toward the beginning of the book. They have an accident and the carriage, turns over. The horses, trigger warning for animal harm and death. The horses don't fare well, and neither does their carriage driver. So they end up wandering through the snow. It's very dangerous because it's obviously very cold, and they find this place called Wheeldale Inn, and they end up going in and staying for a while. And because it's short, I can't really say anything else about it, because it would give away stuff. But think like ghost stories, like Victorian times, that tradition of telling these ghost stories around Christmas time. You would definitely get the vibes in this book. There's an element of good for her too. And so I did give it 4 stars, because I felt like parts of it, I was like, okay, I don't know if I can really get on board with this. But overall, again, I did enjoy it and gave it 4 stars. And again, here we are with my 5-star books. And I just want to make sure I'm looking at my list. I don't want to forget anything. So the first 5-star book that I want to talk about is Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha. I think it's Allen. I'll have the book, of course, popped up here so you can see. And this one made me like literally laugh aloud when I was listening to it. And it's difficult to make me laugh out loud if it's a book. Even television shows and movies, like I have a very particular sense of humor. But this one made me laugh out loud. So in this book, we are following this reality dating show. Think like The Bachelor. And you have different women competing. And like one of them is a model. And, she's kind of got this reputation for being a bit, promiscuous, which you know what? Hey, that's fine. You do you. It's no problem to me. But she's got that reputation, which some people look down on, right? And then you've got another woman who is like the intellectual one who's not really into the show. And she kind of asks herself sometimes, like, why am I doing this? And then you have another woman who's an Instagram like influencer with fashion and all that kind of stuff. And then you have a Christian influencer from Texas named Lala May. And that character, I feel like, as a woman here in the South, I know these kind of women, and that character was spot on, and that's the character that I ended up laughing at the most. But anyway, they end up at this really remote place in the Pacific Northwest, and they encounter some trouble with a creature that's out in the woods, and havoc ensues, and there are some pretty gnarly things that happen to people. I don't know what happened. My clip champ that I used to record this just went blank, and now it's back. I don't know. I'm gonna have to check and see what happened. I hope I don't have to re-record all this drama anyway. But yeah, Patricia Wants to Cuddle. It was a lot of fun. A lot more fun than I expected. I didn't expect to give it a 5 star. I thought it would be, enjoyable and that I'd have a good time with it, but 5 stars. I loved it. And then we have Attack on Sasquatch Valley by our own BookTube's Jason White. And I read this one for the Cryptid Readathon that he hosted along with Sin's Book Nook and Crystal at Fiber Artsy. And I loved Attack on Sasquatch Valley so much. Obviously, as you can tell from the title, it's stories about Bigfoot. So they are short stories, but then that final story kind of ties everything together. There is some fabulous body horror. I loved the character development too, and the way that he was able to give us characters that we really could feel like we knew and understood in such a short amount of space. That is hard to do, and he nailed that. He really did a variety of Sasquatch stories, and at times, of course, Sasquatch appears in more of the wooded wilderness areas, but there's also urban, an urban story about Sasquatch. So he was an equal opportunity Sasquatch writer where everybody, no matter where you are, can encounter Sasquatch. He also had very beautiful imagery, like his descriptions of moonlight on the snow, just stunning. Absolutely 5 stars. I had so much fun with that book. So that wraps up my November, and thank you so much for watching. I would love to know what you read in November. If you've read any of the books I talked about, what did you think about them? And again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you will subscribe and hit that bell so we can keep on talking about books. And I will see you in my next video.